The planet had been dead for 500 years, but nobody told the ruins. Lieutenant Jake Morrison stepped off the landing shuttle and felt his boots sink in the violet sand. The air was thin and cold, filtered through his helmet into something breathable but tasteless. Around him, the remains of an ancient civilization stretched toward the horizon like the bones of a giant that had fallen asleep and never woken up. He had been exploring dead worlds for 12 years now. Earth's exploration corps sent teams like his to the far edges of known space, searching for resources, for knowledge, for any sign that humanity was not alone in the universe. They found plenty of signs. Empty cities, broken machines, graves without names, but never anyone alive. Never anyone to answer the questions that burned in every human heart. Who else was out there? Where did they go? Why did they leave? Jake walked toward the temple complex at the center of the ruins. His team of 6 spread out behind him, their boots crunching against crystallized soil that sparkled like frozen tears. The buildings here were made of something that looked like glass but felt like stone, smooth and warm, even under the pale light of a dying sun. Dr. Megan Price was the first to speak. She was the expedition's Zen archaeologist, a small woman with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind. Her scanner hummed as she swept it across the walls of the outer temple. "These inscriptions are incredible," she said through the cum. Her voice was soft with wonder. "They describe a species called the Volangti. They lived here for 10,000 years before they disappeared." "Disappeared how?" asked Danny Webb, the team's engineer. He was a tall man with an easy smile and a talent for making broken things work again. Megan shook her head. "I don't know yet, but they were waiting for something. Someone. The inscriptions keep mentioning a prophecy." Jake listened with half an ear as he walked deeper into the complex. He had heard about prophecies before on other worlds. Ancient civilizations loved their prophecies. They wrote them on walls and carved them into stones, and then died anyway, leaving nothing behind but mysteries and dust. But something about this place felt different. He could not explain it. The air seemed to hum with a frequency just below hearing. His skin tingled beneath his suit. Every step he took felt heavy with meaning, as if the planet itself was watching him, judging him, waiting for him to do something important. The central chamber opened before him like a flower made of light. Shafts of pale starlight fell through holes in the ceiling, illuminating a space that took his breath away. The walls were covered in murals showing tall, elegant beings with silver skin and eyes full of stars. They were dancing, laughing, reaching toward the sky with expressions of joy and hope. And at the heart of the chamber stood a statue. She was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. Carved from stone that shimmered like liquid moonlight, she stood on a pedestal of crystal, her hands folded over her heart. Her features were almost human, but not quite. Her face was longer, her cheekbones sharper, her ears pointed like leaves. Her eyes were closed, and her expression was peaceful, as if she was simply sleeping and waiting for someone to wake her. Jake stood before her and felt something stir in his chest. It was not attraction, not exactly. It was recognition, as if some part of him had always known she was here, waiting for him across the vast emptiness of space. "Hey, Lieutenant," Danny's voice crackled through the cum. Jake turned to see his team gathered at the chamber entrance, grinning at him. "Looks like you found yourself a girlfriend." The others laughed. Even Megan smiled, though she tried to hide it behind her scanner. Jake rolled his eyes. "Very funny. Come on," Danny said. "Give her a kiss. Maybe she'll wake up like in those old fairy tales." It was a joke. Everyone knew it was a joke. Jake knew it was a joke too. But something made him turn back to the statue. Something made him lean forward. Maybe it was the strange feeling in his chest. Maybe it was the way the light fell across her face. Maybe it was just the fact that he had been alone in space for too long and had forgotten how to say no to a dare. He pressed his lips to her forehead, expecting nothing but cold stone. Instead, warmth flooded through him. It started at his lips and spread through his entire body like liquid fire. His heart raced, his vision blurred. The chamber seemed to spin around him, and for a moment he thought he was dying. Then the statue moved. Her surface rippled like water touched by wind. Color bloomed across her skin, silver and gold veins pulsing beneath flesh that had been stone just seconds before. Her fingers uncurled. Her chest rose and fell with breath. Her eyes opened, and Jake found himself staring into irises that swirled with galaxies, with nebulas, with the light of 1 billion distant suns. She looked at him, and she smiled. "You were always meant to," she said. Her voice did not come through the air. It echoed directly in his mind, warm and ancient and impossibly kind. Jake stumbled backward, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his chest. Behind him, his team was screaming. He could hear them raising weapons, calling for backup, demanding explanations. But he could not look away from the being before him. She stepped down from her pedestal, with grace that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Her feet barely touched the ground. Her silver hair floated around her face like she was underwater. She was tall, taller than any human, and light seemed to gather around her like a cloak made of stars. "Do not fear," she said, and her voice calmed the chaos around them. "I am Seraphel, last guardian of the Volanti. I have waited 500 of your years for the one whose soul could wake me." Jake's mouth was dry. His hands were shaking. He had seen many strange things in his years among the stars, but nothing like this. Nothing that made him feel so small and so important at the same time. "Why me?" he managed to ask. "I'm nobody. I'm just a soldier who kissed a statue as a joke." Seraphel reached out and touched his face. Her fingers were warm, impossibly warm, and where they touched his skin, he felt peace wash over him like a wave. "There are no jokes in the cosmos, Jake Morrison," she said. "Every action ripples across time." The Volanti knew that one day, a species would rise from a small blue world. A species reckless and brave and full of impossible hope. "We knew one of them would find me." She looked past him at the other humans, who stood frozen with their weapons half raised and their mouths hanging open. "The prophecy spoke of your kind. It spoke of humanity. And it spoke of you." Jake stared at her, trying to make sense of words that refused to fit together in his mind. "What prophecy?" he asked. "What are you talking about?" Seraphel's smile faded, and in her ancient eyes, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Fear. "The darkness is coming," she said, "and you are the only ones who can stop it." The team kept their weapons raised for a long time. Danny's hands were shaking so badly that his rifle clicked against his armor. Megan had dropped her scanner and was backing toward the chamber entrance, her face white with shock. The others stood frozen, caught between the training that told him to shoot and the wonder that told him to wait. Jake raised his hand slowly. "Stand down," he said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, calm when everything inside him was screaming. "She's not hostile. She's not human either," Danny replied. "Lieutenant, 5 seconds ago she was a rock. Now she's talking in our heads. How do we know she's not about to eat us or something?" Seraphel turned her galaxy eyes toward Danny and smiled gently. "I do not eat," she said. The Volanti drew energy from starlight and from the bonds of love between living things. We were not predators. We were gardeners. Gardeners? Megan stepped forward, her scientific curiosity winning over her fear. "What do you mean?" "We helped life grow across the galaxy. We found young worlds and nurtured them. We guided species toward wisdom and peace. For 10,000 years, we tended the garden of the cosmos. Sarafel's voice grew heavy with sadness. Until the Hollow King came. Jake felt the temperature drop. It was not real, not physical, but something in Sarafel's words carried a chill that sank into his bones. "What is the Hollow King?" he asked. Sarafel moved toward the murals on the walls. Her fingers traced the images of dancing Volanti, and as she touched them, they began to glow with soft light. "He is entropy made conscious," she said. "He is the silence at the end of all songs. He existed before the first stars were born, sleeping in the void between galaxies. When life began to flourish, when love and hope and joy spread across the universe, he woke. And he was hungry. The murals changed. The dancing figures twisted in the shapes of terror. Dark tendrils wrapped around them. Their joyful faces became masks of despair. He consumed entire civilizations," Sarafel continued. "He did not kill them quickly. He drained them slowly, feeding on their fear, their despair, their surrender. The more advanced a species was, the more delicious they were to him. The Volanti were among the most advanced beings in the galaxy. What happened to your people?" Megan asked softly. Sarafel was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "We calculated our odds of survival. We ran simulations. We debated strategies. We were logical. We were wise. We were everything a great civilization should be." She closed her eyes. "And we realized we could not win." Jake watched her face and saw grief so deep it seemed bottomless. "So we made a choice. We sacrificed ourselves to create a seal, a prison to hold the Hollow King for as long as possible. Every Volanti gave their life energy to the seal. Every one of them died so that the rest of the galaxy might live. But you survived," Danny said. "I was left behind." Sarafel opened her eyes. "I was placed in stasis, transformed into stone, waiting for the ones the prophecy spoke of. The ones who could finish what we started." Jake shook his head. "You keep talking about a prophecy, about humanity. But we're not special. We're just one species among thousands. We barely made it off our own planet without destroying ourselves. How are we supposed to fight something that killed the most advanced beings in the galaxy?" Sarafel walked toward him. She moved like light moving through water, graceful and inevitable. She stopped before him and placed her hand on his chest, directly over his heart. "The Volanti were wise," she said. "We were logical. We were peaceful. And that is why we failed." Jake felt warmth spreading from her touch, filling him with something he could not name. "When the Hollow King came, we accepted our fate. We calculated that resistance was futile, so we did not truly resist. We died with dignity, with grace, with acceptance." Sarafel's eyes burned with sudden intensity. "But humans do not accept fate. You rage against dying stars. You build hope from ashes. You curse the darkness and light matches just to prove you can." She pulled her hand back, and Jake staggered slightly, feeling the loss of her warmth like a physical blow. "The Hollow King feeds on despair. He feeds on surrender. He cannot comprehend a species that refuses to give up, that fights even when fighting is pointless, that laughs in the face of oblivion and kisses ancient statues just to see what happens." Danny let out a nervous laugh. "So you're saying our stubbornness is actually useful for once?" "I am saying your stubbornness may be the most powerful weapon in the galaxy." Sarafel smiled, and it was like watching sunrise after an endless night. "The prophecy did not choose humans because you are wise or powerful or advanced. It chose you because you are impossible, because you break every rule, because you refuse to be measured by logic alone." Megan stepped forward, her fear completely forgotten now. "This is remarkable. You're saying human psychology is fundamentally different from other intelligent species? That our irrationality is actually an advantage?" I am saying that the Hollow King has destroyed 10,000 civilizations, Seraphel replied. All of them went quietly in the end. All of them accepted their fate when they realized they could not win. She looked at Jake with those infinite eyes. But when humans realize they cannot win, they fight harder. When the odds are against you, you become more determined. When the universe tells you to give up, you spit in its eye and keep going. Jake felt something stirring in his chest. It was not just warmth anymore. It was fire. It was the same fire he felt when he signed up for the exploration course, knowing that space was dangerous and cold and full of things that wanted him dead. It was the same fire he felt every time someone told him something was impossible. How much time do we have? He asked. Seraphel's expression grew grave. The seal has been weakening for centuries. I estimate we have days, perhaps weeks, before it breaks completely. When that happens, the Hollow King will be free again. And he will be hungry. Then we need to call for backup. Jake turned to his team. Danny, get a message to the Intrepid. Tell Commander Grant what's happening. Tell her to contact Earth Command. Danny hesitated. Lieutenant, do you really think anyone is going to believe this? They'll believe it when they see her. Jake nodded toward Seraphel. They'll believe it when they feel the darkness coming. Right now, we need every ship, every soldier, every weapon humanity has. Megan was already picking up her scanner. I'll start documenting everything. The inscriptions, the murals, Seraphel's testimony. We need evidence. Good. Jake looked at his team, at their frightened faces and trembling hands, and he felt proud of them. They were scared. Anyone would be scared. But they were already working, already planning, already refusing to give up. That was what made them human. He turned back to Seraphel. We're going to need your help. Everything you know about the Hollow King, every weakness, every weapon the Volanti created. Can you teach us? Seraphel nodded slowly. I can teach you what I know. But Jake Morrison, I must warn you. The Volanti prepared for 10,000 years. You will have days. Jake smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a species that had crawled out of caves and conquered a planet and reached for the stars with nothing but stubbornness and dreams. Then we better get started. Commander Lisa Grant had served in the Earth Fleet for 23 years. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt. She had survived the Jupiter rebellions. She had stared down alien war machines on a dozen worlds and never blinked. But sitting in her command chair aboard the starship Intrepid, listening to Lieutenant Morrison's report, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Doubt. Let me understand this correctly, she said, her voice flat through the cum. You kissed a statue. The statue came to life. And now you're telling me an ancient evil is about to wake up and destroy the galaxy. Yes, Commander. Jake's voice was steady, but she could hear the exhaustion behind it. I know how it sounds. It sounds insane, Lieutenant. Seraphel is standing right next to me. You can talk to her directly if you want. There was a pause, and then a new voice came through the channel. It was like no voice Lisa had ever heard. Soft and ancient, and filled with the weight of centuries. Commander Grant, I understand your doubt. The Volanti struggled with belief as well. We were a logical people, and logic told us that the Hollow King was impossible. A creature of pure entropy that should not exist in a universe of order and light. But he does exist, and he is coming. Lisa leaned forward in her chair. Around her, the bridge crew had gone silent, staring at their stations as if afraid to breathe. If what you're saying is true, why should we believe we can stop something that destroyed your entire civilization? Because you are not like us, Seraphel replied. We were gardeners, Commander. We nurtured life and guided it toward peace. We had forgotten how to fight. But humans have never forgotten. Your entire history is a story of conflict, of struggle, of refusing to die when death seems certain. The Hollow King has never faced a species like yours. Lisa sat back. She wanted to dismiss this as nonsense, as some kind of alien trick or mass hallucination. But something in Seraphel's voice rang true. Something ancient and sad and desperate. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Days at most. Perhaps only hours. The seal is weakening faster than I anticipated. When it breaks, the Hollow King's minions will pour through first, creatures of shadow and void. They will test your defenses, probe your weaknesses. And then he will come himself." Lisa made her decision. She had not survived this long by ignoring warnings, no matter how strange they seemed. "I'm contacting Earth Command," she said. "Morrison, keep me updated on everything." "And Lieutenant?" "Yes, Commander. Next time you want to kiss something, run it by me first." Despite everything, Jake laughed. "Yes, ma'am." The next 48 hours were chaos. Word spread through the fleet faster than light could travel through normal space. Admiral Ben Cooper, the grizzled commander of the 3rd Sector Fleet, took personal charge of the response. Ships began arriving at Kepler 442b from across the sector. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, frigates, even civilian vessels that had no business being anywhere near a potential combat zone. Their captains refusing to stand aside while humanity faced its greatest threat. On the surface, Jake worked alongside Seraphil to prepare the ancient temple for what was coming. She taught him things that human science had never imagined. How to channel the energy of his own life force into weapons of light. How to sense the presence of the void creatures before they appeared. How to shield his mind from the despair that the Hollow King radiated like heat from a dying star. The learning was painful. It pushed his body and mind to limits he had not known existed. There were moments when he wanted to collapse, to give up, to admit that this was too much for any human to bear. But then he would look at Seraphel, at the hope in her ancient eyes, and he would find the strength to continue. "You are remarkable," she told him during a brief rest. "No Velanthi could have learned this quickly. We would have needed years to master what you are absorbing in hours." "We don't have years," Jake replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. "So hours will have to do." She smiled at him, and he felt warmth spread through his chest. It was strange, this connection between them. She was an alien being 5 centuries old, a creature of starlight and prophecy. He was a simple soldier from a backwater planet. They should have had nothing in common, but when she looked at him, he felt seen, understood, valued Dodd, and he wondered if that was part of the prophecy too. On the second day, the sky changed. Dodd. It happened slowly at first. The pale sun seemed to dim, its light growing weaker and colder. Shadows deepened in the ruins, pools of darkness that seemed to move when nobody was watching. The temperature dropped. The air grew thick with a presence that made every human on the planet feel small and afraid. Jake was in the central chamber with Seraphil. When the first rift opened, it appeared in the sky like a wound, a tear in the fabric of reality itself. Through it poured creatures that defied description, made of shadow and screaming void, their forms shifting and changing like smoke caught in a wind that blew from nowhere. The fleet opened fire immediately. Plasma bolts and missiles streaked through the atmosphere, striking the creatures with explosive force. Some of them died, dissolving into nothing. But more kept coming. "They are testing you," Seraphel said, her voice tight with tension. "The Hollow King wants to see how you fight, how you react, how quickly you despair." Jake watched the battle through the temple sensors. Ships were taking damage. People were dying. The void creatures moved through space like they were made for it, dodging fire and slipping through shields and tearing into holes with claws of pure darkness. But the humans did not run. Admiral Cooper's voice rang out across every channel. All ships, maintain formation. Focus fire on the largest creatures. Show these things what humanity is made of. The fleet responded with a roar of weapons fire that lit up the sky. Jake saw destroyers swooping in close to protect damaged carriers. He saw gunners manning their posts even as their ships burned around them. He saw courage that made his heart ache with pride, and then he felt it. A presence at the edge of his mind, vast and cold and utterly empty. It was like staring into a void that went on forever, a darkness that had existed before the first stars were born. It pressed against his thoughts, trying to slip inside, trying to make him feel small and hopeless and alone. "The Hollow King," Seraphil whispered. "He is watching." Jake gritted his teeth. He could feel despair trying to creep into his heart, trying to convince him that this was pointless, that humanity was nothing compared to the darkness, that they should just lie down and accept the end. But he was human, and humans did not accept anything. He pushed back against the presence with every ounce of stubbornness he possessed. He thought of Earth, of his family, of every person who had ever told him he was not good enough, not strong enough, not smart enough. He had proven them wrong every single time. He would prove the Hollow King wrong too. "Get out of my head," he growled, and for just a moment, he felt the ancient darkness flinch. Seraphil stared at him with wonder in her eyes. "You pushed him back. No one has ever done that before." Jake smiled grimly. He'd picked a fight with the wrong species. Above them, the battle raged on. And in the darkness beyond the stars, the Hollow King began to realize that the prophecy might have been right after all. The battle for Kepler 442b lasted 72 hours. By any reasonable measure, humanity should have lost within the first 12. The void creatures kept coming. Every time the fleet destroyed a wave, another rift would open and more would pour through. They were learning, adapting, finding weaknesses in human tactics and exploiting them with terrifying speed. Ships were torn apart. Stations fell silent. The casualty lists grew longer with every passing hour. But humanity did not break. Admiral Cooper stood on the bridge of his flagship, the battleship Defiance. He had not slept in 2 days. His uniform was stained with coffee and sweat. His eyes were red and bloodshot. But his voice never wavered as he directed the fleet, moving ships like pieces on a chessboard, always finding new ways to hurt the enemy. Carrier Group 7, fall back and regroup. Destroyer Squadron 12, fill the gap. We're not giving them a single inch of space that we don't make them bleed for. Around him, his crew worked with desperate efficiency. Nobody complained. Nobody asked for rest. They all knew what was at stake. On the surface, Jake Morrison had become something more than a soldier. The training Seraphil had given him was taking hold, transforming him into a weapon the Volanti had never imagined. He could feel the void creatures now, sense them before they appeared, strike them down with bursts of light that came from somewhere deep inside his soul. But he was just one man. And the darkness kept growing. The temple had been converted into a command center. Human engineers worked alongside Volanti technology in ways that should not have been possible. Danny Webb had spent 40 straight hours rewiring ancient power systems with human generators, creating hybrid weapons that fire bolts of combined energy. "This shouldn't work," he muttered, connecting another cable. "The physics don't make any sense. Human technology runs on different principles than ours," Seraphil explained. "Your machines are powered by aggression, by the desire to overcome obstacles. That energy is compatible with our light-based systems in ways we never anticipated." Danny laughed weakly. "So you're saying our stubbornness is literally powering these weapons?" "In a manner of speaking, yes." Dr. Megan Price was coordinating research efforts, studying the Volanti inscriptions for any advantage they might have missed. She had barely eaten since the battle began. Her eyes were hollow with exhaustion. But her mind was sharp as ever, piecing together fragments of ancient knowledge. "I found something," she announced, rushing into the central chamber. "The inscriptions mention a way to strengthen the seal. If we can channel enough life energy into the original binding point, we might be able to hold the Hollow King back for another 1,000 years. Jake looked up from his meditation. "How much energy are we talking about?" Megan hesitated. "Enough to kill whoever provides it. The Volanthi gave their entire civilization to create the seal the first time. To repair would require a sacrifice of similar magnitude." The chamber fell silent. Everyone understood what that meant. "I will do it," Seraphel said quietly. "I am the last of the Volanthi. My life force is powerful enough to complete the seal. It is why I was left behind. No." Jake stood up, his hands clenched into fists. "There has to be another way." "There is not. The prophecy said humans would stop the Hollow King. It did not say that we would survive. I was always meant to die for this, Jake. I have known it for 500 years. Before Jake could argue, alarms began screaming throughout the temple. The sensors showed something massive emerging from the largest rift yet. Something that made the void creatures look like insects. The Hollow King himself was coming. He manifested above the planet like a hole in reality. A writhing mass of nothingness that seemed to drink the light from the stars themselves. Where he passed, matter simply ceased to exist. His presence radiated despair so powerful that ships closest to him stopped firing, their crews falling to their knees in hopelessness. Admiral Cooper's voice cracked across the comm. "All ships, this is Admiral Cooper. I won't lie to you. What we're facing right now is beyond anything we've ever fought. By every logical measure, we should retreat. We should run and save as many lives as we can." A long pause. "But we're human. We don't do logical. We do stubborn. We do brave. We do whatever it takes to protect our own. So if this Hollow King wants to erase us from existence, he's going to have to work for it. Every ship that can still fly, form up on me. We're going to show this cosmic monster what humanity is made of." The fleet responded with a roar of defiance. Ships that should have been limping home turned back toward the fight. Damaged cruisers took up positions beside pristine destroyers. Every human in the system pointed their weapons at the darkness and prepared to fire. On the surface, Jake watched through tears of pride. He had never been prouder to be human than in that moment. These people, his people, were facing the embodiment of despair itself, and they were not running. They were fighting, but it was not enough. The Hollow King swept through the fleet like a wave through sandcastles. Ships vanished into his darkness. Missiles passed through him without effect. Energy weapons were absorbed into his void without leaving a mark. He was death incarnate, entropy given form, and nothing humanity had could truly hurt him. "We need to get to the seal chamber," Seraphel said urgently. "It's our only chance." Jake grabbed her arm. "You're not sacrificing yourself. There has to be another way. There is no other way." She looked at him with eyes full of ancient sadness and something else, something that looked almost like love. "You woke me, Jake Morrison. You gave me days of life after 5 centuries of stone. That is more than I ever hoped for. It's not enough. I didn't wake you up just to watch you die. You did not wake me up because of choice. You did it because of destiny. And destiny is calling me now." She pulled away from him and ran toward the deep tunnels that led to the seal chamber. Jake ran after her, his heart pounding with fear and determination. Behind them, the temple shook as the Hollow King drew closer, his presence pressing down on the planet like a physical weight. The seal chamber was ancient and vast, a cavern of crystal that pulsed with fading light. At its center stood a pillar of pure energy, the binding point that had held the Hollow King prisoner for 500 years. It was flickering now, dying, the sacrifice of the Volanthi finally running out. Seraphil walked toward it, her hands raised, her body beginning to glow with inner light. "Don't," Jake pleaded. "Please." She turned back to him and smiled. "Thank you for waking me," she said. "Thank you for giving me hope again." And she reached for the pillar. Jake Morrison had made many decisions in his life. Some of them were smart. Some of them were stupid. Most of them fell somewhere in between. But as he watched Seraphil reach for the pillar of light that would consume her life, he made the most important decision of his existence. He refused to let it happen. He moved without thinking, crossing the distance between them in 3 desperate strides. His hand caught her wrist just before her fingers touched the pillar. She turned to look at him, surprise and frustration in her ancient eyes. "Jake, you must let me go. The seal will break completely in minutes. If I do not act now, everything ends. Your fleet, your planet, your entire species." "There has to be another way," he said stubbornly. "There's always another way." "There is not. I have studied the prophecy for 500 years. I know every word, every symbol, every possible interpretation. The seal requires a sacrifice. It requires me. Then the prophecy is wrong." Seraphil stared at him. In all her long existence, no one had ever said those words to her. The prophecy was sacred. The prophecy was certain. The prophecy was the foundation upon which the entire Volanthi civilization had built its final hope, and this human was telling her it was wrong. "You cannot simply declare the prophecy false," she said softly. "The universe does not work that way. Maybe not for the Volanthi." Jake tightened his grip on her wrist. "But I'm human. We rewrite the rules all the time. We fly when physics says we should fall. We survive when medicine says we should die. We love when logic says we should give up. The prophecy said you needed to find humans to stop the Hollow King. Well, you found us. Now let us do things our way." Above them, the ceiling of the chamber cracked. Darkness seeped through the gaps like liquid shadow. The Hollow King was pressing down on the temple, his vast presence crushing everything in its path. They had seconds left, maybe less. "What would you have me do?" Seraphil asked. Jake looked at the pillar, at the fading light, at the symbols carved into the crystal floor. He thought about everything Seraphil had taught him over the past 3 days. She had said that Volanthi technology ran on love, on connection, on the bonds between living things. She had said that human stubbornness was a form of energy that could power their ancient weapons. And she had said that he woke her because their souls were connected somehow. Across time and space and species, that an idea formed in his mind. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of stupid, reckless thing a human would do. He pulled her close. "Jake, what are you doing?" "Something stupid," he said. "Something human." And he kissed her not on the forehead like before. Not a joke or a dare or a moment of impulse. This was a real kiss, full and deep and desperate, pouring every ounce of his life force, his hope, his stubborn refusal to accept defeat into the connection between them. Seraphil gasped against his lips. Energy surged through both of them, human and Volanthi, intertwining in ways that the prophecy had never predicted. The light in the pillar flickered wildly. The symbols on the floor blazed with new brightness. Something was happening that had never happened before in the history of the universe. Their combined energy flowed into the seal. Not as a sacrifice, but as a gift. Not death, but life. Not ending, but beginning. The pillar exploded with light. It was not cold and ancient like Volanthi light. It was not harsh and aggressive like human light. It was something new, a fusion of both, warm and fierce and impossibly alive. It poured out of the chamber and up through the temple and into the sky. A beam of pure energy that struck the Hollow King, like a spear through his empty heart. The darkness screamed. It was a sound that tore through reality itself. A cry of rage and pain, and something that might have been fear. The Hollow King had consumed 10,000 civilizations. He had drunk the despair of countless species. He had never felt anything but hunger and satisfaction. Now he felt something new. He felt hope. And it burned. The light spread through his void form like cracks in ice. Where it touched, darkness became light. Where it reached, emptiness became fullness. The Hollow King tried to flee, tried to retreat into the void between galaxies. But the light followed him, chased him, refused to let him escape. In ships across the fleet, humans watched in wonder as the darkness dissolved. The void creatures vanished like smoke and wind. The rifts in reality sealed themselves shut. Stars that had dimmed returned to their full brightness, shining down on a universe that had been saved. In the seal chamber, Jake and Seraphil stood holding each other, both of them trembling with exhaustion. The pillar of light had faded to a gentle glow, but it was stronger now than it had ever been. The seal was not just repaired. It was transformed. That was not supposed to work, Seraphil whispered. Jake grinned, bloody and exhausted and impossibly happy. Yeah, well, we're human. We don't do supposed to. She laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in 500 years, and the sound filled the chamber like music. The prophecy was wrong, she said wonderingly. Or perhaps it was more right than we ever understood. It said humans would stop the Hollow King. It did not say how. We made our own way. Jake pulled back to look at her face, at the tears streaming down her cheeks, at the smile that lit up her features like a sunrise. That's what we do. In the hours that followed, the fleet counted its losses. They were heavy. Many ships had been destroyed. Many lives had been lost. The battle for Kepler 442b would be remembered as one of the costliest in human history. But they had won. Commander Grant's voice came through the cum, tired but triumphant. Lieutenant Morrison, I don't know what you did down there, but whatever it was, you saved us all. Earth Command is already calling you a hero. Jake looked at Seraphil, at the being who had waited 5 centuries for him, who had been willing to die for a species she barely knew. I didn't do it alone, he said. Somewhere in the ruins, Danny Webb was already making jokes about interspecies romance protocols. Megan Price was documenting everything she could, knowing that this day would change human understanding of the universe forever. Admiral Cooper was giving speeches about courage and sacrifice and the unbreakable spirit of humanity. But in the seal chamber, underneath a sky full of restored stars, Jake Morrison and Seraphil stood together in comfortable silence. They had faced the end of everything and found something new instead. A bond between species. A hope for the future. A love that had defied prophecy and logic and the cold equations of the cosmos. What happens now? Jake asked. Seraphil took his hand. Her fingers were warm against his skin, full of life instead of stone. Now we begin again, she said. Together. And far across the galaxy, in the void where the Hollow King had once ruled, a new light was shining. It was human and Volanti combined, stubborn and wise, fierce and gentle. Impossible and real. It was the light of a universe that had learned something new about hope. It was the light of love. Freely given in the most ridiculous circumstances. It was the light of humanity, and it would never go out.